The First Descendant, First Impressions. Hello, this is Mike Burgess on Helm Tower. I've been playing The First Descendant. It is a new free-to-play looter shooter that just came out, and as somebody who tends to like these looter shooter games, as you can see, I have a channel dedicated to Destiny. I wanted to give this one a shot and just, spread out and try other these types of games to see if they'd be worth playing more and covered on the channel. I think, I've played maybe 8 to 10 hours already of it and just wanted to give some early thoughts on the game so far. And I'll just say out the gate, I am supremely whelmed currently. I'm kind of in the middle of the main story campaign, if you wouldn't even call it a story campaign, because really all it has built up to so far has been go to this open zone and do what is the equivalent of like a little public event or like patrol zone mission. Again, I'm kind of comparing these things to Destiny style activities, so if you're familiar with those kind of things, you're already know what I'm saying here. But they basically are very simple things in these open zones where you are just kind of like standing on a plate and defending a little zone, or you're just shooting a lot of enemies and there's not really like variance to those. I've gotten to I think it's like the third major zone that you're opening, and like literally the story campaign so far in all three of those zones has been go to these little nodes, which is a patrol event, do a bunch of those, then do what is called an operation, which is kind of more like, a more like bespoke little mini dungeon or like a strike. And again in the Destiny comparison world, and those have been okay. It's just a more like slightly designed experience where you go through areas and do certain objectives, and then there's a boss at the end. The bosses in those have not been super interesting. Like one was just like this weird bubble shield, and you had to shoot these very specific points on the shield, and then he got even more shields. So it was just kind of like this really drawn out thing. It felt more like than anything than an interesting fight. So that was fine. The loop of this stuff early on so far has not really excited me or shown anything interesting to what the later loops of this game might be. I am gonna hold my breath on that stuff because again, I've not seen any of it. I've not really looked super into it because I do want to get there and experience it myself and come up with my own things. Like the only really things I know about in the later of the game are things relating to the characters, the Descendants. They are basically like Warframes. If you played Warframe in any capacity, you'll know that like you have to get grinding. You have to grind up materials or certain things to unlock these characters. You have an initial like set of characters you can choose from. I chose Ajax, which is basically like the tank character. He can make a big barrier shield and like has like a big stomp move. Not the most exciting, but like it feels all right to play. Like it's that's what I'll say. Like the third person shooter, I'm pulling off some of the abilities. Does not feel bad at all. Just also not super mind blowing either, is what I would say. The other characters, I've not really tried a lot of the other characters yet because again, it involves like farming out certain activities to find the specific materials in order to get them, or just outright buying them because again, it's a free to play game and you can just like spend currency. I believe the currency is called Caliber, and you can buy that and then just buy characters or like kind of bypass some of the grind. I don't really have the drive to do that kind of stuff just yet. I did already pick up the battle pass just to see what that is, and that is a video game battle pass that just has some stuff in it. So there it is. Seems fine, whatever. I've mainly just played Ajax, but I did, through the main story, you do unlock a character called Bunny. It's definitely a character I've seen. It's very popular, and she's been in a lot of the promotional material if you followed that stuff for the game. And she has like electric powers and can run super fast. And I definitely have seen a lot of people pick her up. Pretty much any activity I've done that has been squatting up with random people in a matchmaking activity in the game so far, I've basically just been in a party full of bunnies. So definitely a popular character for sure. She seems all right. I have not really messed with her too much yet, but probably will at some point. There's some other characters. Again, I've not gotten like that deep into like remember names or anything like that, but I know there's like one character who has like turrets who seems kind of interesting. He can summon like a more offensive turret, but also like a defensive, like helping healing medic turret, which sounds kind of neat. There's another character like has fire powers, and there's like one of the other starting characters, Viessa, has like ice powers. So that seems all fine. I'm curious to how much that mixes up the moment-to-moment gameplay, the different characters. I wonder if that'll kind of spice it up a little bit more, which is kind of what I'm looking for, frankly, at this point with that kind of stuff where, like, again, third-person shooting feels fine and all that stuff, but, like, the moment-to-moment gameplay I'm doing is not really, like, that exciting with, like, doing essentially what are public events from Destiny in these open zones, and then the operations, which have been a little bit more engaging, but not that much more engaging. And then there also are void intercept battles, which are basically like, you know, instance boss battles where it just puts you in this big zone and you fight a big boss. And they're like, you know, you can kind of like almost like scan it with like an eagle vision or something from Assassin's Creed, and it'll show you points on it that are weak that you can shoot to do more damage, and then you're kind of breaking those parts off to essentially like stagger it or stun it to do even more damage. Those were fine, but it would have been a little bit, I think personally for me, it would have been a little more interesting if like the arenas were more interesting and more designed rather than like they just kind of feel like these big gray boxes that just make it feel a little more bland, like I'm just fighting something in a virtual reality rather than like in a world. You know, the battles themselves are generally pretty fine, and you know, I'll be curious to see the other ones because they definitely were more interesting boss battles than anything in the other parts of the game so far, for sure. But yeah, that's largely where I'm at. I'm curious because, you know, again, I've not looked up too much about end game stuff and post kind of, I guess, this campaign or whatever. Progression and how that works. Like, is it all just gonna end up being grinding out these characters? I don't know. I hope it's a little bit more than that, and there are some cool activities that are worth taking on the challenge for. I know there are things like called like ultimate weapons, which are seem like the equivalent of like Destiny exotics, where they have like more unique skills and attributes to the guns themselves. So I'm curious about those as well, and also, you know, the Descendants themselves. Like, you know, I know that there are like more interesting like modules, which are like basically mods you equip. It is literally the same system from Warframe, where like, you know, they have things to improve general abilities on them, like, you know, reload speed on guns, or like adding like fire damage to your guns or whatever. But then there's also, you know, more unique things to the characters themselves, which I have not seen any of that yet, but I'm assuming that's like more in-game stuff where it'll vary up the actual abilities your characters can do. I don't know what to level they are varied, but I'm curious to see that stuff because it does sound more interesting than what I've experienced so far. And I'm hoping that stuff is interesting enough to be like, to kind of have that aha moment that I'm hoping or looking for with this game, because I definitely have not had it yet so far, where it just kind of so far feels very rote to just kind of run back and forth through these kind of patrol zones, do these sort of really generic sort of defend point zones and do all these other things. I'm hoping for a little bit more interesting loops, and I'm hoping that comes in the later game experience. So we'll see if that pans out. I'm gonna keep trying and playing the game and seeing how I feel as I keep going. I will definitely probably make another video follow up to this once I'm much deeper in, maybe have unlocked a handful of characters, and maybe figure out what the end game progression actually looks like. And once I get to that point, then I'll have like a really more in-depth kind of review or whatever you want to call it of the game. But so far, it seems totally fine. One thing I'll shout out, because, you know, I don't know if this is much issue on other platforms, but I'm playing on PlayStation 5 mainly so far, and I have definitely had some technical hiccups where like definitely a lot of frame drops and dips in certain parts of the game and areas, depending on where you are. Like sometimes it's totally fine, sometimes it drops pretty hard and is pretty rough looking. I've had some weird server stuff as well. I guess you could just pretty much call it like some kind of server lag, where the game kind of like everything kind of starts moving in place, like you'd see in some old, you know, Halo 2 map, Xbox 360 day style stuff, and the server essentially has to catch up with what's going on in the game, and everything will kind of like then like zip to where it needs to be, and then everything will like resume essentially in this moment-to-moment combat. I didn't have it a whole lot yesterday, but I definitely noticed it like later in the day, so it might have just been a thing where once a lot more people started getting on to play, like after work or whatever, all that stuff kind of started cropping up. So I don't know if anybody else experienced that. I'll see if I can get footage of that specific thing, but like I had it happen it started happening very frequently later in the day when I basically said like, okay, I'm good with playing for today, kind of a moment that I had. So, you know, we'll see if that stuff improves. You know, it's all been relatively minor. I will give credit that, like, you know, a lot of these games launch on day one and you can't even log in and play because of server queues or other server issues. You know, we see that with a lot of the other, you know, especially much bigger live service games like Destiny had with Final Shape. I know, like, I think like Dawn Trail had some server queue stuff, but not as bad as it's had in the past. Whereas some of that stuff can have like pretty rocky launches. And I will say, you know, the stuff in this game so far have been relatively minor in the grand scheme of things for little launch issues and hiccups compared to most games. So I'll give them credit for that. You know, again, I just want to see if this game gets more interesting in the later parts. So I'm going to stick with it and report back in a future video. But for now, thanks everybody for watching. You know, I don't know how much I'll cover First Descendant here on the channel in a super in-depth way. Like, I don't know if I really do, like, I don't really expect to see like guides or anything like here, but I might have more impression videos or maybe news update videos for the game in the future here on the channel. So feel free to subscribe if you're into that sort of stuff or looking for that sort of stuff. It'd be greatly appreciated. Or leave a like or a comment and let me know what you think of the game so far down below. But thanks for watching, checking out the channel, and I'll see you next time.